When I was in the 8th grade, I went on a week-long camping trip with my entire extended family. My Aunt Susan also brought her boyfriend Michael with her. None of us had ever met Michael before, but he quickly became part of the family. He ate with us, he fished with us, he engaged in the same loving teasing we did to each other. By the end of the trip, we were all pleased with my aunt's choice of a significant other and looked forward to seeing him again. It was about a year later that we learned the truth my aunt had been hiding. Michael was an abuser. He would come home drunk, hit her in places bruises wouldn't show, sometimes even strangle her until she lost consciousness, and then he would apologize the next day with flowers and chocolate. Eventually, after suffering in this relationship for a whole 2 years, my aunt was able to work up the courage to leave Michael. Now, I find two things about this story particularly sad. First, even though we had all lived with this man for a week, none of us were able to identify his abusive tendencies. The way he silenced my aunt with a stare, the way he constantly interrupted her, the way he invalidated her thoughts and emotions. We were only able to see these signs after the fact. Secondly, and most importantly, my aunt had felt trapped in this relationship for over 2 years. 2 years of abuse and neglect and insecurity and hopelessness. She wasn't sure how she could leave the relationship, or even if she should. My aunt felt alone and powerless in this struggle. The reality is, stories like my aunt's are all too common for people in the US. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in the US report having been physically abused by an intimate partner. In other words, every 20 seconds, someone is experiencing physical abuse at the hand of someone they're supposed to feel safe with. A spouse, a family member, a friend. This is a tragic reality that can strike anyone, regardless of their sex, gender identity, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. Beyond that, even on our own campus, almost 29% of UW students have reported some kind of dating or relationship violence since enrolling at this institution. As you look around Red Square right now to see your fellow students heading to class, catching up with friends, the odds are at least a quarter of these people have experienced relationship abuse. This widespread abuse is a reality with lasting, debilitating impacts. Beyond the obvious physical consequences of domestic violence, studies have shown that relationship violence is correlated with significantly higher rates of depression and suicidal behavior. In the case of my aunt, not only has she been left with deep psychological trauma, but also a chronically low self-esteem, an inability to form healthy relationships, and a serious drug addiction problem. One reason this abuse is so widespread and long-lasting is that survivors of relationship violence are often unaware of the resources at their disposal to leave their abusive partner. The Federal Bureau of Justice Statistics estimates that around 44% of US domestic abuse instances go unreported, and even more go unprosecuted. Many survivors do not feel the violence is worth confronting. Some fear for their lives, either because of what their abuser might do if they report a crime, or what they do without that abuser in their life, providing financial or other kinds of support. A sense of insecurity, uncertainty, and love also cloud many survivors' minds. Feelings that the abuse is a one-time thing, that their abuser will change, that they are somehow in the wrong and simply being punished for it. How can survivors feel anything but hopelessness in the face of this uncertainty? The National Domestic Abuse Hotline, or NDAH, aims to prevent survivors from feeling the sense of hopelessness. Established under President Clinton in 1996, the NDAH provides survivors with a guidepost for how to leave their abusive relationships. The hotline has a database of over 5,000 local help centers and shelters across the country to connect their clients to. In addition, the 24/7 phone line run by trained staff provides counseling and advice, not only to domestic abuse survivors, but also to those who are concerned that someone they know might be in an abusive relationship. With the NDAH, Survivors of domestic abuse are able to not only be connected with relevant resources, but also are given that first affirmation they need to get help. It's not your fault, and you deserve healthy relationships. Yet, even with over 20 years of experience under its belt, the NDAH cannot educate survivors of domestic abuse alone. The organization depends on everyday people like us to make differences in our own communities. The NDAH is very grateful for donations from supporters, as the funds help to provide the training and staffing needed to offer the 24/7 phone lines. Head to thehotline.org to donate to the organization. In addition, the NDAH's desire to aid survivors will be useless unless people are aware of the hotline to begin with. Consider educating your friends, family, coworkers, and acquaintances about the organization, either in person or through social media. One day, the information you're giving out could land in the laps of a survivor, lost and in desperate need of some guidance. And finally, attend a Green Dot training on campus. Green Dot aims to educate bystanders about relationship violence and the signs that can indicate you know someone experiencing it. Through a single afternoon training, the program will teach you how to spot red flags in your own everyday lives and how to have those difficult but necessary conversations with the people you're worried might be being abused. Domestic violence is a huge issue around the world, but just because it's so widespread, is that supposed to mean we just accept it as a norm, as a reality? It's time we, as a society, stand up to the abusers and stand by our fellow people in solidarity. By supporting the NDAH and learning about domestic abuse, you can help create a culture where it's okay to ask for help, where it's okay to say no, but where it's not okay to experience abuse alone.